The Kitzur story is, so what I was learning yesterday and today, and maybe we'll do more of it, is like this, and it's very important. We're talking about Teshuva. I actually proved it from the Yad also. Let's see if we can do it here. But the point is like this.
You have a whole series on Teshuva, right?
Many series, but they're all wrong, of course, because I have to Teshuva and have better pshat.
That's the lesson.
Very, very good. So, it's very interesting. He told me, so let's see what the Chosrosh says. It's very interesting like this. Let me explain myself. There is this concept called Teshuva. Interesting concept. I want to make a point like this. I think we've discussed this in the past already, if you remember. But there's a concept called Teshuva, and it's a very interesting concept in the context of Judaism and Christianity, and I guess, I don't know about other religions, I guess also. But at least in these religions, it's a big concept. Teshuva goes together with slicha, right? Forgiveness, or grace, for the Christian term. And it's a big deal. Like it gets a lot of space. How do we know? Because there's only 12 months in the year, and 1.5 of them are dedicated to Teshuva. At least in the Litvish edition of your Chassidish, you have 3 months because Osa Shovim. So that's a big deal. Like there's Chosrosh has how many Shorim? 12? 10? 10. Right? Each of these titles of big areas of Avodas Hashem. And there isn't a Yom Tov dedicated to any of them besides for Teshuva. There isn't Chag Yichud Hashem, or Yom Aseres Yemei Kniya, or Chodesh HaAhavas Hashem. Maybe we should make one because it's overdue. We should make one, right?
I think they should. As you're saying, that's actually a great idea.
We should take the 12 months in the year and dedicate each to one virtue, one basic
We'll call it Cheshbon Nefesh.
value. No, the Cheshbon. You mean the Shach Cheshbon Nefesh that has the list?
Say the book Cheshbon is Benjamin Franklin.
He did something like that. Rav Soslan had a list of virtues. Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think as a cloud, we should have just clouds and months.
Okay, but now we're talking about the tradition. In the tradition, there is a month, or at least 10 days, which is already rabbinical. Chazal, Hanikra Chazal, Chachamim of who? I don't know, the Gemara already talks about it. It talks about a Seres Yimei Teshuva. Actually, I think the language of Seres Yimei Teshuva is not in the Gemara, it's in the Medrash. But in any case, that's just a philological discussion. But it's an ancient concept. The Rambam takes it seriously, actually, and both in Sefra, in Mishnah Torah, and in Moreh Nevuchim, and the Tamya Mitzvahs of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. It takes Seres Yimei Teshuva as a serious thing, and it's always interesting, which midrashim he thought are pshat, or he calls it Masoyres Ha'umah or whatever, but he takes them seriously as a basic way of understanding. He almost never does what some modern people do, which is to take the real pshat of the Yom Tov, what it says in the Pasuk, and the Medrash is just the Medrash. The Rambam assumes many Medrashim to be the true pshat, like Shavuos is Man Torah. And the talk starts as Teshuva. So it's very traditional, and then you have later people that did a whole month for it, whichever Sephardi decided we should do Slichas for a whole month, and because of that we have to do it. If we're Ashkenazim, we have to do Teshuva a whole month, you see?
What?
What happened?
And what? What is tracking to?
And there used to be that Rosh Hashanah is Lo Shayfer Abayis, wake up, and then Yom Kippur is Slicha, so it makes sense, we got to say Teshuva, we do Teshuva. That's almost pshat of the Pasuk, according to the Rambam.
And then, also, I think Chazal saying that.
Then came.
Of course, you do tshuva the whole year, but just only can handle a limited amount of time.
That doesn't
10
say.
days is correct.
That doesn't say anywhere.
It doesn't say it, but it's a basic idea that you have to set aside days.
Maybe, but then came Sephardi. I don't know whom. Whoever has the first Rishonim Sephardi already have this minhag. The Rambam doesn't talk about it, but in Sephardi apparently maybe a little later developed such a minhag of doing slichas from Rosh Chodesh Elul. Because if we ask God for forgiveness, we might as well start a little earlier. But you've been to Sephardi Slichas, right? It's just songs. And then came some Ashkenazi and said, if a Sephardi and saying Slichas, we got to do Teshuva. Hello, no. Teshuva, it's enough to do Seres Yimei Teshuva. You want to say Slichas for Sephardi? No problem. Go to Sephardi Slichas. Lo Shofar. Okay, Lo Shofar is fun. It's not meant to. Long Shofar is supposed to be fun. It said in the right? The Torah brings the particular place of Long Shofar. But Long Shofar is like a ritual. It's not like Bifakvet and the Teshuva. I read in the Shofar is a simcha, pashtas. Shofar is a simcha of simcha, And after the Kiyat Shaifa, we say a Pusik, B'Shem Chaya Gilan Kol Hayom. And I've read there's an old Piyat from Pinchas HaKohen, I think. It's one of the early Paitanim, like close to the Kadir. And he has a Piyat apparently for Chodesh Elul.
Where do you live?
I wrote this down in my notes I found from last year. In where he lived, I don't know, in Israel or in somewhere in the East, not in Europe. And he, I forgot where the source is, but it says in my notes from last year. And he has like a piyut for Chodesh Elul and talks about Shloshim Yom Shemeichem HaShofer or something like that. So, anyways, that's the thing. But in any case, there's for sure like a special evening dedicated to Teshuva, which there isn't for anything else. So, that's interesting. How the Teshuva becomes such a like central religious virtue. There's a whole like little cottage industry of people that make the claim like this. Since we're studying Rambam, which the study consists of, in some sense, of marrying, being mashadach, the Nicomachean ethics with Moses' book. Yeah, that's what the Rambam consists of in some sense. We've read Rav Shmuel in Petiba and that understands it explicitly this way, and the Rambam himself which understands it less explicitly this way, but that's basically his project in the ethics. People don't realize, but we talked about this already, this is a more radical project or a more important project than the marriage of Aristotle's metaphysics to Moses' metaphysics, right? That's a small issue, or at least you could claim, well, if it's true, we're stuck with the truth. We have to b'derech oines. We have to apologize and make the Torah say what the truth is. But ethics is not really the truth, or at least something which Aristotle at least admits is not really demonstrable. It's not like something that we're going to prove. Something that's a lot more connected with specific traditions and with. Of course, we went through this, depending on how objective you make it. But it's for sure not the same thing. Like many Yidden say, Chacham b'gayim ta'amen, Torah b'gayim lo ta'amen, and they think that it means it's not. No shaykhs with what the Mama Chazal, this medrash actually meant. But in any case, what some people interpret it to mean is like if you have objective wisdom, like science, you got to accept it from anyone. But Torah, in the sense of how ethics, how to act, you cannot accept from anyone. There's like in the Tanya, for example, which also is going to be in my next week's message, Hashem, I hope, who is quite opposed to reading Chachmas Chtzanis, reading philosophy. It says this explicitly, including, and he has the explicit thing, including philosophical ethics. There's the famous Bartanura in the beginning of Pirkovas, who's the same Medrash Shmuel really, which has the same feeling going on in it. And the Tanya even goes so far, and there's a ma'amar about this in, I think, Greenwald. Rebbe Nachum wrote something about it in one of the recent koiftzim that he does, about how, and it's in the beginning of the Tanya literally doesn't like Chav Salvavas. He says Chav Salvavas is just one guy's thoughts.
It's just what?
Sechel Enushi. It's human thoughts. Therefore, it's you have to have Musa that's based on. Oh, that's a good point for you. Remember am I totally off my topic? Yeah. I'm talking about how the Rama married Aristotelian ethics, the book of the Nicomachean ethic, with the Torah's ethics, or even mitzvahs, which we have to understand. We spoke about this a little bit. This is like the big thing that he does. This is not explicit in Shemona Perukim, but it's explicit if you understand the context. Now, I was saying that some people, like Tanya, who was explicitly opposed to reading philosophy, and he said, the Rambam, blah, 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 didn't take seriously this understanding. And he also very explicitly talked about how also philosophical ethics are not to be read, even though theoretically ethics is a good thing. He's not saying because it's evil. So later there's people that say all. So you see, it's very interesting. There's like this industry, like I said, of people saying, and it's a Christian, it's an old Christian thing to do. Augustine basically has this already in a different way, but also not as radical, but other people more radical, to say like, all of Aristotle's ethics are a Greek way to live and not a Hebrew, not a Jewish way to live.
Are they saying that ethics are not objective? That's what you're saying, going with that assumption.
In some sense, or they're objectively wrong is, I don't know. We have revealed ethics which are better.
But the thing is,
there's so much
less of a science than...
There's so much of... Everyone agrees that it's less of a science than science, than physics and metaphysics. There isn't a debate about this at all. There's only people that disagree with this are the Kantians. We talked about, we weren't missed the, I don't know, like 5 shirim past was a whole shit about this, how Kant exaggerates the need for ethics to be objective or universal, and it doesn't need to be. And that's what leads us to all the problems that we're in. Okay, but that's a different drusha. The drusha now is how there's like, it's interesting, always we have to always compare these like anti-philosophical things, and they all have this, there's one thing that, which is to say that, you know, this is all not good. What you think is a good life is not the good life. People say it in all kinds of ways, but this is one thing to say. Or another way to say it, I'll give you 3 ways you can do it, okay? One way is to say, and this is very interesting, because Aristotle is explicit about this, that he is theorizing, so he's doing something more than what is in his tradition. And that's part of the discussion, how much can you theorize, how much better does it get, and so on. But he is theorizing a way of life, what he was taught as like the good person. Not necessarily that everyone is a good person, but like the ideal, right? That's an ideal good person, someone has a good life. What did they teach in Athens? That's what he's theorizing. He doesn't pretend to do more than that. He does think that it's, of course, about the human being. But their view of what a good human being is, right? It's not their view of what Minig Athens is, which is still, they know that there's something that just Minig Athens. Like which clothing to wear, it doesn't think that's ethics, right? It's still, right? That's, in that sense, it's sure objective. It's about what a good human life is. But it's very clearly based in some sense on the life that we're living here. So there's one kind of person that says, very cute, so Athens has their ideal human being, and we have a different ideal human being, totally different, no shaykhs. Maybe when we'll get to Spinoza's criticism of this, we'll see. Maybe our ideal human being is just someone who's obedient to the Torah. Or how they say in Lakewood, you have to do Ratzon Hashem. I forgot about this recently. A few people came like, what is you'd have to do in life? Make an achzrich for Hashem. Nobody knows what that means, but that's something. It's very different than becoming a completely flourishing person or whatever Aristotle's about, right? So that's one way of doing it.
You could just say that the second thing you said is just match up with the first thing. Because the first
you
thing,
could do whatever you want.
Wait,
no, but they're explicit. That does not mean the same thing. It does have content. The content of that is to do whatever it says in Mishnah Berurah. But the general idea of it is to do Ratzon Hashem. And what does that mean to Ratzon Hashem? Do Mashakos Mishnah Berurah. And if you do something else, it's not Ratzon Hashem. That's their understanding. And the only midah that you could call of it is obedience. There's only one good midah called obedience. Makes sense. That's a religious view and it's explicit. I mean, the people that criticize it are better at making it explicit, but I think that's what it is. And then, or you could say something different. You could be like a Christian or a Chassid that says something like the main virtue is faith. Or you could be Chassidish and say the main virtue is bittul. And meaning what a good person is not about his achievements, even in a moral sense, because St. Augustine taught us that no humans cannot be virtuous.
Why can't you call it humility?
Yeah, it's more than humility. I mean, everyone agrees that humility, in some sense, is a good virtue. We're saying
I'm saying obedience is a way.
No, obedience is like following. I'm listening to you.
Why
follow
would
my
I?
Yiddish.
Why would I if I don't think I'm less than you?
No, because, well, it doesn't have to be. You're stronger than me, or because the because is another discussion. I'm just giving you two ways. It could be like that. Doesn't it? I don't think it's about that necessarily, because then we'll interpret it differently. I'm giving bad interpretations now, like how you would split it off. I don't really think that way. I really don't really even understand people. I think that way, but I do see even many modern people like have this way of talking. You read Jonathan Sachs says this drasha, okay, that there's a Greek way of living and it's different than the Hebrew way of living. He wants both, of course, but it makes sense to him to talk about this. Remember the two cultures or whatever he calls it.
Yeah.
And he's just popularizing something very popular in modern Jewish thought and modern Christian thought, and it's already an ancient Christian idea. Like I said, so like Augustine would tell you, you cannot be a good person, therefore the only real human good is some kind of acceptance of God's grace, known as believing in Christ, or something like that. And you could talk to Chassidim that speak a very similar language. And they say like, what it means really to be good is something totally different. They're not denying that you have to hold the midas tovos and so on. It doesn't have to be an explicit denial, but it's saying that what makes everything good is very different. Okay. And some kind of acceptance of what you want, how low it is to be a human being, and so on, and accepting God's grace or something. I don't know. That's a whole different thought. It's a whole different ideal of what a human being is. And this is a very typical Christian, like Augustinian Christian criticism of Aristotle's ethics and Rambam's ethics, which are basically the same, which is that they seem to make the human being too much. There isn't a lot of room for human fragility in it. It's kind of aristocratic, yeah.
That's the worst thing Christians ever
And Nietzsche
did.
comes and says, yeah, the Christians are wrong. It should be like
the worst
this.
thing Christians ever did was made Jesus a god. He was supposed to be a Navi, then we could have the same ethics, right? Clearly, he's supposed to be a Navi. The skies open up and he sees a Malach. I'm like, he's supposed to be a Navi.
I want to
And
be
then
the
your
guy.
ideal guy, you have your ideal guy. Okay, fine, so everyone strives to be him, perfect. Instead, he made him unattainable. You're like, oh, some people are terrible, they can't do anything. They ruined the Vua. Right?
Okay, maybe.
This is the beginning of this series, that the whole point is become a Navi, right? And they like
I hear.
they took that out of the picture.
You could say something like that. At least there's such a view if you say that. Yeah. Of course, whatever. This is not a hacking on Christians, Chief, because we don't know enough of Christianity.
It's
to
just
hack on
important
it.
to keep your most ideal human to be human. It's just to be human, basically.
Maybe there's such a criticism to be
You're not
made.
gonna
There's
try
such a
to
criticism
be
to be made. I agree with it. There's such a criticism to be made. In any case, what I'm saying is that this would lead to entirely different valuation. This is a very popular criticism that Aristotle basically is for aristocrats who have everything going for them. And he says explicitly, like if you don't have enough money, you can't be a good person. It says in Aristotle, a fetish. And like, what are all the poor people going to do, or what are all the stupid people going to do? In a very explicit sense, one of the big things of religion, and again, this is explicit in Christian writers. I think that you could find it behind a lot of Jewish arguments also. Which is that people are set at Rambam for being too elitist. In other words, for his ideal human being to be something pretty hard, and really you need a lot of good circumstances. You need to kind of be rich and have time and things like that. And what about all the downtrodden masses of people? I don't know. What about them? And there's like this good impulse, like grace of chesed, of we have to redeem these people too. What are we gonna? It's not an argument.
I'm saying, but
it's an ethical argument, which is not
a counter-ethical argument. That in some sense, the Rambam believed in people a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Because of him, we don't believe Hashem is a guf anymore. They're like,
I know this. I'm just saying there's still the ideal that he has is still doesn't take into account most of human fragility. So anyway, this is one thing you could do. You could say this is all wrong. Your ethics is absolutely wrong. It's even evil in some sense. It's gav. Aristotle is based on gav or based on bittul. This is also something that Tanya says explicitly. And regarding Socrates, he says that Socrates wasn't really a good person because he was just about himself. And he killed himself for philosophy, but that's just because he likes philosophy. Doesn't look at it.
It's bad to be fierce to do things for yourself?
Yeah, according to him, because he's a Kantian, remember. Okay. And he thinks that the good, in this sense he is, he thinks that the good cannot be the perfection of the human being. It has to be something bigger than that. It has to be the obedience of, some kind of obedience of the human being, something greater than him. And it can't make sense, because the moment it makes sense, then it's again for you. Right? That's why in Chabad they say that Mesiras Nefesh cannot make sense. Because if you're just make a cheshbon like Socrates, who says, but look, it's kind of nothing wrong with dying, so I might as well die, and it's better to die and then to give up my principles or whatever. That's not what he said, but let's say he would say something like that. Then the Babich Rebbe says, very cute, you're just an egoist. You're not very different than anyone else. In order to be like a Avram Avinu, according to him, you have to do things that make no sense, that you get nothing out of. Not that you kill yourself because you think you're going to go to Gan Eden. You kill yourself just because. And this is basically Kant. Well, he doesn't even say just because God commanded it, but something like that ends up being. Why am I? You understand what I'm saying? So Kitzur HaMaaseh, that's one kind of thing you can do. You could do another thing, which is a little less radical than this, and people do it. Like I said, Benny Matter and other. This is only the Tanya's version of this kind of argument. I have to get some Lubavitcher here to like the Nemzachon for the Baal Tanya because it's not nice.
I don't know if they would say just because. Wouldn't they say about it's gratitude?
No,
or whatever?
no. And Chabad they're against gratitude. Gratitude is what Chazal says. Chazal Avodat Hashem is rational. It's the end of it, which means rational is another way of saying it's for yourself in the end. Well, you can't say it for yourself. The Chazal is a little less like that. The Rambam is for sure for yourself in the sense of for your own perfection. Mm-hmm. And Chazal says there's like this concept of gratitude and so on. So, but still, it's not breaking yourself. It still makes sense. It's correct for a person to have gratitude, right? Mm-hmm. And the Tanyas would only allow you to say because my soul is by its essence like that. That he does allow you to say.
Again,
which is where he does become backwards the pillion.
But again, is this
so it's just pure obedience?
But again,
not even obedience. I think that obedience is also something that doesn't like. He says something like pure because that's what you are. And then, like I said, that language gets us back.
What are you?
Nothing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know. Ask I told you, you have to get out of better Lubavitcher to argue with things like this. I'm just putting it into this context.
And I felt bad after, like, very shortly I stopped.
You should never argue with people. You should just try to learn what they're
No, I was trying to learn what he said. I was asking the questions. Literally, I really tried to get, someone, to explain things he's saying, and I stopped. I pushed my back.
No, most people don't have the ability to do that. But in any case, if I would be Lubavitcher, you'd be able to argue with me. Never come down Lubavitcher, so but there are. You could call it by.
I was genuinely coming to try to understand them, and I just stopped.
Okay, but it's about you. I'm giving you the context. You could see why he has this problem and why he gets there. And I do think that in the end, the solution, it's not clear if it actually got out of it. But okay. In any case, that's one. So in any case, this one solution you could do in ethics. You could say what you think is good is actually bad. Okay. You could do another slightly less radical thing, which I think is like what the Mekabalim like doing, or the Platonists that I read, the Neoplatonists that I like, or the Mekabalim. And you could say something, and also famously, I think Aquinas, or I forgot who it is in the Christian tradition that came up with this idea, which said that there's different levels of virtue, or based on that. There's different kinds of being a good person. In other words, he would say something like, everything Aristotle said is about being a good person is fine. Those are nice things. Those are like humanly good things. But there's also in the Christian tradition called theological virtues. It's like I forgot what the other one is called. Like normal rational virtues and theological virtues. And in the Christian kind of people talk about faith and piety and grace and charity and other things like that, which as like another level. Not like it's the worst. It's different. It's not good. He's not saying I'm about grace and against whatever perfection you're about. I'm saying that this is a level beyond that. And you could make this work if you have like different levels of the soul.
Consequences, though.
What do you mean by consequences?
Meaning, like, for example, terror, you get punished, right, for doing something wrong, right? Whereas Christianity, I'm saying, like, I'm sorry.
No, you get that. That's not. Right, but in some sense, they're not saying that you don't. For example, if that would be correct, right? If there's such a, it's not. Of course, Christian actual polities don't forgive anyone, right? Doesn't actually happen, but because they also are living in Olam Hazeh, right? But in the ideal, but very good. But if there's this ideal, if someone would say, according to Midas Hadin, is of course if you murder someone, you have to be murdered. The original most kind of Christians are not against it. It's like the Pope is now against the death penalty, so whatever. But the old-fashioned Catholics that we read, they're pro. And the kids said, they say, Midas Hadin is to murder you. And maybe even an Olam Hazeh, which has to live according to the lower level, maybe we'll let the state do it. When the church is not going to do it, so we'll give it over to the state because they take care of the earthly things, and we'll let them kill you. But
the church not. Right?
Very good. And now the church is going to come and say, but Jesus taught us something like Lefnim Shirasadin. Of course, they make this into a big deal, but they're acknowledging that it's a kind of Lefnim Shirasadin. It's like, but by God's grace, we forgive you even though you deserve to be killed. Now, will you Lamas be killed or not? That's a different challenge. But Lamasa, there's this very clear difference between what you deserve, between like what you rationally deserve, what we would call what you humanly deserve, and what you divinely deserve. Like, and you could make this work, like I said, if you talk about like levels of the soul. I think the Jewish analogies for exactly this kind of idea. You can make this work for the.
It's hard to discuss, right?
It's not hard to discuss. You could make this work. You could say something like, and it says in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that if you say Videi, it says if you say Videi, you go to Gan Eden. But you still kill you. We don't say we accepted you. But we kill you and then you go to Gan Eden. In other words, it's saying you die.
Killing is the divine.
That is the retribution.
Right.
Yes, very very good.
So,
but it's enough. This retribution only applies to your body or to your state in this body. It doesn't apply to your divine soul. So we still have these like two levels. Your divine soul, if you would have been a bad person at the level of divine soul, but you could be, then according to that Mishnah, right, you could not repent and then you go to Gehenna or whatever happens. But if you do repent, then the Teshuva helps you. That's what many people have understood, at least in that Mishnah. We did a shit about this to figure that out. But if you understand this way, you could say Teshuva, like or the grace of Teshuva or of Slicha, or in some sense works for a higher level of the soul, for whatever stays after you die. But for whatever lives in this one, it doesn't work. So you can have these two things. You could say, for example, right? You could say that Midas Hadin or Mitzad your Neshama, your Nefesh, whichever level is in Olam Hazeh, you're bad. That one goes to Gehenna. Maybe if there's a Gehenna for that, or whatever you exactly conceptualize it. But some higher level of your soul, or some purer level, never sinned, or even if it did sin, can receive slicha, and then that part goes to Gan Eden, and there's not a stira. The din admitted in the Mishas would just refer to different people, so to speak, or different parts of the same person. Right? The Tanya has a structure like this, famously, but this is like a Neoplatonic way of saying things, and then you have, of course, like you said, sometimes you get into stiras, but the theoretical answer to all the stiras, at least, in the Olam HaMaaseh, we can't do both, we have a problem. We have to either kill you or not. But at least the theoretical answer, and this would be like something like, I killed you, but I still love you. Right? That was what the Inquisition would tell the people that they kill. We're killing you for your own good. So you should go to heaven somehow by something like that, right? We're not hating you. Because in other words, we're not entirely stuck at this level where you have to be killed.
But they gave it to the states. They didn't do it
again, that has to do with this, like, again. But again, and like full theory, ideally, it would be something like this. But you could say, we took a bad example, not a hard example, because people either get punished or don't. But you could talk about simpler examples. You talk about like we talked about humility, like something like. No, this is very chassidish, like the mass of the Velvish Badage. I told you this Shira is a Shira in chassidish masses. And the Velvish Badage was the son of the Mechel Zlatchev, and he used to say that every Yid is a tzaddik. So one day one of the tzaddikim came and said, you have a daughter, you have a son, why don't you be mishaddik? You're a tzaddik, I'm a tzaddik. He said, very nice, you'll be mishaddik with your tzaddikim, I'll be mishaddik with my tzaddikim. So this is a joke, but what is it saying? He's saying that I believe that you're a tzaddik in some level of your neshama, you're a tzaddik. But I also, not crazy, I also live in some other level, you're not a tzaddik. I just keep on focusing on that because I think that it's a good way, it's going to helpful somehow to focus on that. But I'm not confused, right? So in the same way you could say, like I talked about this in my Friday Shirim, like the Chassidish Rebbe say, when someone comes to me, I think I'm lower than him, and the Rebbe thinks that he's worse than all the Chassidim, and all kind of cheshbonis, why? But the truth is that he's not. Because how the guy said, no problem, you're not a Rebbe, but I sit in the back. It's so funny, with all the Hanova, the Rebbe is still sitting over and you're the guy in the back now. What's the point? Of course, it could be they're just cynical. But if there's a true understanding of this, the answer would be that when he really feels that way, but it's on a different level, and then it's in a different meaning. We could say something like, relative to God, I'm less than you, but relative to you, I'm more than you. Okay? In the eyes of God, we're all sinners. But in the eyes of man, we're not all the same sinners, at least. Right? There's some differences. And there's a hierarchy which is based on this level. And it might be a mitzvah, to feel on that level and to behave on that level in some sense, and that's what it means to be a tzaddik and so on. But you're not really confused. There are two levels. There's a stira, the Gemara has an achlaikas, even if you're allowed to have gava or not, right? Rav Yosef and Rava. One person said you have to have shminis, and the other one said leim and leim v'leim k'tzise. But it seemed you could forever that stira by talking about something like this. And of course, it's not proper for a human being. The Rambam doesn't do that. But you could say something like this. That it's not proper. I'll find out. I don't know. The Rambam, you could say something. It's proper for a Talmid Chacham. You can't walk around as a seriously, it's not correct. It's not good. You have to wear a nice rekel because you're a person that's important. You have some leadership position, or even not. You're the aristocracy. But does that mean that you have to behave that way? They have to feel that way. So these are different levels, and you could call that theological virtues and so on. So that would be another thing to do. And for that, for example, famously the Mekabelim who talk about the philosophers and say, B'mukim, remember who said that? One of the Rishonim Mekabelim, I forgot whose language is very famous language, said, B'mukim ma'am and rosh ma'am ma'grain, right? Said in the place where the philosopher's head is, that's where our feet are. That's a very beautiful formulation because he is not negating the philosophical achievements. This works for metaphysics, but it also works for ethics, explicitly. He's not saying that you're nonsense. He's saying that you're the Olam HaYetzirah, and I'm from Olam HaBriya and on. So that would be another thing that you could do. You could say, if we're Matan Torah, we would have had such an Aristotelian, without the Wef Torah, we have even higher ethics also. But something, let's first do those. Okay, that's a second strategy. A third strategy, what was the third strategy?
Same way it says, if you, someone told me this, I'm thinking of an example. Like, even if you don't think Mashiach is what the Ram says Mashiach is, you still should also do what his Mashiach is first. Like, why not?
Like how about you figure that one out before you do the higher one?
But while you're waiting for this magical guy to come, just like go do this also.
So I forgot what the third thing I wanted to say was. Either you could do not say that it's bad, or you could make it good but on a different level, or you could. Or you could identify the two things. Identify them entirely. Of course, you can be left with some contradictions, and you'll solve them within the one framework of them being about the same thing. Right? And that is the Rambam's way. So it's very interesting that the Rambam, his whole book, like if you read the Shana Prakim, it's more or less structured. It's not explicit, but it's implicitly structured that way, where he brings first the philosophical thought, and then he brings a pasuk to support it. Or sometimes he brings a philosophical book, and then he brings a pasuk to negate it, that doesn't support it, and then he gives a teretz. And the teretz is always, and like someone knows, the teretz is never to the Torah. It's never an akimta in the philosophy. It's always an akimta in the Torah. It's all like very what?
What's the example you mean?
The example is Perek Vov, right, where he says, and this is the example. The philosophers say that you have to be a good person. How is it called? A mu'ula, right? You have to be a what's the still language for this? Remind me. Someone who also loves the correct things and not only does them, right? And in the Torah, it seems that obedience is the point, and therefore you should love the bad things but not do them anyways, right? And there's like this Mamar Chazal, Yafshi B'Psach Chazal, and the Rambam says no, those Mamar Chazal are only talking about specific cases, but in general, the philosophers are correct. That you have to be a perfect person. You have to be a virtuous person.
You should not like doing murder.
You should not like the bad things, exactly. So you see, it's a very clear example where there's more examples in the book, but you can see very clearly how he accepts his basic understanding is there's an understanding. There's a problem, so it makes an akimta. I don't like the formulation akimta in the Torah. He's saying that is a prat in the. It's really also an akimta in Aristotle. So what I'm saying is doesn't say, well, Aristotle is only talking about some weird case. He's saying the Torah is only talking about some weird case, or this Mamar Chazal, the Torah is maybe too broad. So that is his way of doing things. There might be more complications in the Rambam about this, but this is like his general. What it does in Shemaya Prakim is sure like this, always identifying the Torah things with the Aristotle things, and when he gets to explaining it, it's going to always be within that framework, never outside. So back to Teshuva. So this Teshuva thing, so many people have said, I've read a few articles in JSTOR that said that the Aristotle does not have a virtue of forgiveness or a concept of repentance in his book. That is what they have claimed.
Give me a quick definition of what you mean
What?
by Teshuva. I don't want this to turn into this year, but can you give a definition?
Of what?
Teshuva.
I'm giving you a definition.
Okay.
So according to which, there's two definitions that I'm giving you. Okay? The tradition, like the normal definition, and if you read the Machzor, or maybe some places in Tanakh, you'll find this definition, is that Teshuva is an extra halachic, extra legal thing that God does to you. Okay? Or another what?
It's another God.
Not another God.
Does it like not fit into the system, essentially?
It fits into the system. It fits into the system because Yeshiva is Midas Rachma, not Midas Adin. The system, the Jewish, the very, very traditional, like one of the first, like two God things that we have are, no, they're both gods. They're both the attributes of God. So they're both hanugas of God, or whatever you want to call them. God, and by analogy to like a human being or human king, it's about like a pardon. Pardon is a pardon outside the legal system, depending on who you ask, but it's something part of the system that sometimes the king or there's some formulas that say this is because the king is beyond the law, but we still have a pardon even in like the American and almost every system that doesn't claim the king is above the law, but somehow claim that it's about how's it called, clemency or something like something that compassion destroys the law. Yeah. That is the theory, and there might be like a theory of which person deserves compassion and so on. So it might be entirely anarchic. But the basic concept is something like, and you read Midrashim that said this explicitly. Mitzad Adin is like that, and Hashem, very famous Medrash that reads Yirmiyah Novi about using a different analogy. The Torah says that you're not allowed to take back your wife after she goes with another husband, another man. With another husband, maybe. No, also with another man. And God says that I don't have to list the Torah. Because if by the prophetic analogy of the Hashem and the Yidden being a married couple, then if you were mizana with different gods, then you should not be allowed to take us back. So Teshuva should be against the law. And God doesn't follow the law. Or he does follow the law, and there's a din called Teshuva which helps this. That's just two ways of saying almost the same. No.
I didn't think so.
No, the Chaskel doesn't seem to have this understanding of Teshuva. He has a much more limited understanding of Teshuva and of God's grace. Or he has actually does. He has a different interpretation of God's grace. He puts it into mitzvah then. But
It goes both ways.
but he has a different chapter of why God has to do things against the law. Everyone knows that God will do against the law. So that's just why. So Yirmiyah Novi has the idea of compassion and so many other Yashem, which is this first Novi that talks about this metaphor of marriage. And they all seem to think that God will go beyond, and maybe a human person could also, right? Of course, the halacha says that you shouldn't, but whatever, you find the heter, and the heter, still the husband has to be masculine, right? You can say, I can give you a get, but I won't because I love you anyway somehow. Right? So that is one understanding. The Chnesel Shalom famously says this very explicitly, that Teshuva Shlem Nadin, it's Chesed, and the Ben Yain, I think, says it explicitly, and I'm not sure what the Chazal says.
What?
Does Chazal think that Shiva is supernatural? It's an S.
I didn't get to that part yet.
I think he said in the end, when he talks about, even in the beginning, he seems to think that, not sure. Okay.
No, it's a chayid, I'm saying.
He does?
It's a grace, yeah. I didn't see past the first.
I'm not sure. In any case, I think that the classical, if you read the Machzor, that's what we're talking about. The Machzor doesn't say, and it basically is all about appealing to God's grace. And it's a normal thing, like the system works like this, we already know from the beginning of the year that it's going to be like that, but that's the Machzor says. Right? I very much like Rashi in Sefer Eicha that says, Nachnu Fashanu Merinu Atalei Salachta. But
Rashi says, after I just explained to you humility, that's...
Right, but that's why you need to do tshuva, but he doesn't say how the tshuva works,
No,
that's the end,
says,
right?
He says in order to do tshuva, you need to have humility first, because it wouldn't work any other way.
I'm also not sure that kniya is the same as humility, but okay.
Whatever.
Submission.
Submission, yeah. Fine.
Yeah, but okay, I don't know. He says that because people are fragile and weak, but it doesn't say how it works, right? Maybe not here, maybe later. The Kabbalah.
He says at the end, maybe.
Okay, there's acceptance. The acceptance of about tshuva this is one definition of tshuva. Definition number one, traditional definition that tshuva is God re-accepting you or forgiving you after you have sinned, not because you deserve it. According to this interpretation, it's a chiddush. It's a very famous medrash that the Torah and the Chachma and everyone are against tshuva, and only Hashem could do tshuva, and so on. It's also true with this pshat. Anyways, the Rambam doesn't seem to have this pshat. And this pshat is, of course, not something that Aristotle said. Again, unless you'll make some kind of, you'll find some space for like something like a pardon in the legal system, but his ethics doesn't have this kind of tshuva. Very explicitly doesn't.
But he doesn't have the concept?
No, why would he?
No.
It's not even clear he has the concept ben adam lechavera. Like, can I forgive my friend? Not clear that that's a thing.
That he thinks it's a real thing?
Yeah, that is a good thing, real. Everything happens. The question is if it's a good thing. Like, is it virtuous to forgive your friend? Even if he doesn't deserve it. If he deserves it, that's not the question. Right? The Hilchas Yom Kippur says you should forgive your friend, even if he doesn't deserve it. If you don't do it, you're a goy. You know, that's the one thing that if you don't do it, you're a goy. By the way, you're literally a goy. You become a Gevani and we don't marry, you're literally a guy. Yeah? And it's interesting because that seems to say that there's a difference in virtue, right? Because this thought of the Givonim that the Verse Shamra Netzach the Rambam says about Edom, they think that that's correct. It's not that they're evil people who will never forgive anyone. They're like, what do you mean? I'm just gonna forgive you. And it seems like this, like Midah Tovah Shel. This is a very like. Seems like a very good source for that kind of argument. With like, it's like a Jewish thing to forgive. It's not a human thing to forgive.
When you say human, you mean what?
Not necessarily that to be a good human, you have to forgive.
Like
Maybe it's
ethical?
extra ethical, something like Lefnei Mishra said.
Doesn't include
Yeah.
forgiveness.
Shevet Zanach don't have tshuva. It does say Goyim Krevet Tshuva. There's also Gebat Yoina, but there's actually many Achronim.
Maybe they're just Yidden.
It's a problem. There's many Achronim that say that Goyim don't have tshuva that work for them, and it's against all the psukim which talk about Goyim doing tshuva. But the teretz is that the psukim don't seem to have. All these Achronim are talking about this extremely extra rational understanding of tshuva that they all have, and they understand that this is a Jewish thing and it's special grace. So why would Goy have special grace? The Novi doesn't seem either. The Novi either thinks that there is special grace for Goyim, or it just doesn't mean it. And that doesn't talk about that.
Why did you say that a guy who asked for tshuva is now a Yid? We always do this.
No, he's not. The Nineveh people were Nineveh. They were not Yidden, please. Anshe Nineveh. I mean, Anshe Nineveh, they became Yidden. No.
But he didn't become, but just whatever. I mean, same way Bilam, it's bad to me Yid. He just ain't a fake Bilam, right?
Who said he's a Yid?
The Mishnah.
Al Brad Yid doesn't say there's Yid. That
Says
Mishnah,
cholesterol,
Zog the Gemara, no, you're reading back. Okay. No, it doesn't say that. That's wrong. It's fetish. That Mishnah is Lefi the Shitta. It says in the Gemara, I think, the fetish. There's Mishnah Lefi the Shitta that Chidam Sal Mishnah Mchalkalam. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense to talk that Mishnah. But of course, there was a Yid, I forgot who, the Yeshua said, but someone said that Bilam must be really happy that he's counted among these 4 Yidden. Anyways, the kids that I'm asked, it's not really true. That Mishnah is just like reading the Tanakh and saying this guy is good, that guy is bad. It doesn't matter if you're Yid or Goy. It matters if you're in the book.
If you're good, that means you're a Yid.
I don't know. Okay, that's a nice pshat. The kids that I'm asked, this is the one pshat of tshuva. Okay, it's a good pshat. This pshat you would end up with either saying that anyone that doesn't do it is evil. I don't think we think that Goyim are evil. You see, I think they're just Goyim. It's different than being a Goy and being evil. It's not the same. That's exactly what I'm saying. My reading of this story is that you become a Goy if your actions are not to be moichel. You're just a Goy. You're not bad. Because if it would be bad, nobody would say you're a Goy. He would just say be a mensch. No, be a Yid. Different. There's a different meaning here. Say be a mensch means if you're not doing it, you're a chayaru. You're not a mensch. I'm saying no, you're just a Goy. What's wrong with being a Goy? Nothing wrong with being a Goy. I mean, like maybe it's like
That's what you asked.
No, anyone that says you're doing something, you're being a Goy, is implying that it's not a bad thing. Not a humanly bad thing. Because then he would say you're not a mensch. We have this language. There's a difference between saying you're a Goy and you're a mensch, right? What's the difference? Someone that steals your chair in Bismillah is not a mensch.
You just mean ethical.
But someone that talks between Kol Nidra and Tchvayz is a Goy, is a mensch, it's just a Goy. It's different. I don't know if it's exactly ethical or not ethical. I'm not sure.
That's
it's
why
different.
who's over on Shem Saynoach is not even mensch anymore. So
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. Theoretically, yeah. There's law. It's a big difference, right? If you order some things, if you talk about, if you laugh at the Rebbe's tish, you're not chassidish mensch, you're not chassidish Yid, but you're even a Yid, right? And if you don't, I'm not talking about mitzvahs navayos. I'm not trying to give like things where you're not taking something seriously, right? If you eat pizza on Shabbos, then you're a Goy. You're not nothing wrong with you. You're just a shtickle Goy. And if you why are you laughing at me? And if you steal Yano's pizza, then you're not a mensch. It's different. Those are different things. And if you don't do tshiva, that's the shal. If you don't do tshiva, okay, doing tshiva and accepting tshiva, we're connecting these two things. We're saying that the first part of tshiva is that doing tshiva is based on the acceptance of tshiva. God accepts it or humans accept it. It's both. You accept your friend's tshuva, like his. And I don't know I actually don't know what it means. Like I'm not sure. Did we talk about this ever clearly? Like what does it mean that someone is, people go around, you want to say the nechsach, I'll say. What does it even mean actually moichel you? What is this all about? Anyways.
I think it's for him.
It's for him to feel better, no problem. I'm not such a rusha to make you feel better.
Exactly.
But besides
you
for that
person's grave and you ask him also. I don't know.
How does it work?
It doesn't work.
No, I don't think. I think there's real pshat in this. But in any case, but according to what we're talking about, there is something like that. That person has to do some charata or something kveshvas. But then there's still a chesed. It's still like a Yiddish thing to forgive him. That's not a human thing. And that because it's such a huge thing, the guy has to try. If there wouldn't be such a thing that he can be forgiven, he shouldn't even try, right? That's the difference, right? If we wouldn't know that there's a mitzvah of tshuva, that there's a haftocha of tshuva, right? That God will accept you if you do tshuva, then we wouldn't have Yom Kippur. We wouldn't have a serious tshuva. Right? We only have a serious tshuva. Because it's Yom Kippur, it says that God will us. Now you got to come and accept the tshuva. Because it's not going to happen by itself, so there's some give and take. But it's not. Anyways, the Holy Rambam didn't understand things this way. At least doesn't seem to understand it. And he seems to understand very clearly. I don't have a very good source for this, to be honest. Just like what I'm reading and everything that he says. I have like a shtickle mamash raya from Perek Zayin and Teshuva, and you have to also look in two places in Moreh Nevuchim to see more clearly, because it might be a lot more complicated to get the Rambam's full account of Teshuva. There's because of this first thing that I said is Lamish Psukim Mefarashim and Mamar Chalam Mefarashim, the Rambam doesn't deny it. Like he has to work with it. But it is true that if you ask the Rambam what the main thing of tshuva is, and I think the Chazal in this similar sense, and I always remember this like the beginning, like no Shara tshuva seems to say things like this, is something a lot more reasonable. And the point is not reasonable. I'm not against not reasonable things. The point is that it's exactly what Aristotle would say. So he would not sign on this person that said that goyim don't do that kind of tshuva. He does write that medrash about Gavayim, but he wouldn't say that the main. But maybe that's not the main tshuva. The main tshuva is actually something that Aristotle talks about in all of the ethics. And what is it? Something entirely different. This is a definition number 2. You want definition. This is a different definition. Definition is like the Chosov starts. Listen, you already know, you don't need a Torah for this. Then he's going to bring a pasuk for it also. But that you know that human beings are pretty shvachamazes for all kinds of reasons. But what this means, but we have to understand really what this means. It's very important really what this means. This only works, and Chosovus of course has such a thing like this. But I'm not, I shouldn't be taking Chosovus because I don't really know it. But this only works if you understand the concept of midas, right? Of character virtues or character traits. Because if you talk about actions, it seems to be pretty easy to do everything good most of the time. Of course, unless you have like a very crazy, like you have to learn 24/7. But that's not, nobody thinks that's the halacha. In terms of like following the Torah, most Yidden in Lakewood have never done one avada yet. I'm not talking about gambling from the state, whatever. That's like only a minute. But like avada from the Torah, did they? I know the people. I know human beings, normal ones, right? Not like some crazy weirdos that were born without a Yetzer Hara. People that have Yetzer Hara, and they never yet missed a minyan, or like without an oines or something. That happens. That's a pretty normal thing in certain societies. So, for that, we wouldn't be able to say that people are bad. I don't think they're bad. At least if you have the correct chinuch and you're punctual enough. Okay, so missing a minyan has like a midah involved. You have to be a punctual person. You have to at least care enough. But other things, like is there a normal thing to find a yid in Lakewood that never once ate something non-kosher?
It's very common.
It's pretty common, isn't it?
Very, very common.
I'm not talking about like it wasn't such a good hechsher because shvakim are chasna.
But even that.
Even that they do, right? So Bekitze, we don't need tshuva. That's not the things we need tshuva for. I think that this is clear. I tried to claim that the Chalik Kapara about this, but all these like Jewish like halachas, we follow all the halachas. Anyone that's from follows all the halachas. If you didn't, then next time you will. Hashem is melech right away. That's not the problem. That's not the kind of thing that the Rambam is talking about. And what he's talking about is, since he has this concept of having good habits, and having good habits means something like liking or loving the correct things, as we discussed many times. And this is a thing that is both attainable, extremely humanly attainable. All of us have some of it. We have some things that we just like because they're good to us. Because they're to us means that we realize that they're good, and we like them. It's part of us to like them. It's not like because we're some great tzaddikim that has conquered the Yetzer Hara, like the Tanya imagine, or something like that. It's a normal thing. And on the other hand, we also have some bad things we like. Or many. Also many good things. You like doing chesed sometimes, and you hate doing chesed other times, or whatever. I don't know. Or you some other things. You have very bad habits, very bad likes. And though that's normal. This situation is the normal situation. Aristotle says the Chesed, and the Rambam quotes it in but it's not in the first 3 chapters because they're already read here. So it must be Sherek Dalet and on. But he quotes it, and it's a line from Aristotle. It says, he's quoting Al-Farabi, quoting Aristotle, who said, it's rare to find someone born with all the good character traits or all the bad ones. It's not denying that it might be possible because it's all some kind of accident of birth. We see that people are born or brought up naturally somewhat with some good midas and with some bad ones. And theoretically, someone could just be born like a full tzaddik in that sense. Maybe there was Moshe Rabbeinu or someone that was born like that. It's possible. And maybe we know some people that are more like that. But it's rare. In the same way, the opposite, right? And Aristotle talks about this. But Aristotle, by the way, also talks about someone that would be divinely good or beastly bad, like someone that's beyond human perfection. That's actually a concept that I said before, that there's higher levels. It's a concept that he talks about also, but he says that he's not about that. In any case, and now we're talking about the human level. He says it's rare. It's rare to have something like that, and therefore, the normal situation, normal in the sense of the normal distribution, right? Normal not in the sense of what is correct. Normal in the sense of you look around, you'll notice that people have something to do tshuva on. Because it's normal to have bad habits, and it's bad to have them. Unlike the other theory, which was only about actions, in which case it's not normal to not to do bad things. And it's also quite normal to have bad habits. Nothing wrong with that. The question is how many times you've missed a minyan. And it's pretty possible to not miss a minyan the whole year. But if you're talking, and therefore, according to that shit, we don't need a seres Teshuva. Because, what's the point? Only to convince God to be moichelas for, I don't know what we did wrong. Okay, that's a different theory. But according to the theory of the Rambam, it's talking about something very normal. And this is not, in this sense, tshuva is central, not because it's central like it shows us God's love for us or something like that. It's central in a very simple sense. It's central because that's all of ethical work is really tshuva. Because it's not normal for someone to start off from a good state. Nobody starts off from a perfectly good state, or almost nobody. What?
You still hold the old theory then?
Which is the old theory?
This is the theory.
The
series of Teshuva, which is before I started going to Teshuva.
Yeah, this was the theory then, and now I'm explaining it better in different context a little bit.
Yeah, I'm saying, but it didn't change. It didn't change drastically.
This is the Rambam's theory.
Yeah,
I think. But I don't have a good idea that this is his theory. Good question. But this seems to be what he thinks, and therefore, the Rambam says, why do we have to have a seres Teshuva? Because it says like Gemara, the olim yirod of atzma chatzi zak chatzi chayiv, lo yirmid latzma bainani chatzi zak chatzi chayiv, and since seres Teshuva for the bainanim, which are the same chatzi zak and chatzi chayiv from that brais, therefore naager kol Yisrael looking bashmoidas and seres Teshuva and to see marbe betfilas v'tzedakas. What is he saying? And all the mefarshim are trying to understand what's the shaykhs between Yirat Mechatzi Zaka and the Seres Teshuva. Of course, the connection theoretically is just this, because Seres Teshuva is for the Bainani. But what he's really saying, just very simply, if you translate one language to another, you're just saying exactly this. If you would have been a tzaddik in the sense of having all the good midas, then you wouldn't have to have tshuva. Or if you'd be a rasha with all the bad midas, also you're beyond help maybe. But since it's a normal situation to have both, and this Yirat Mechabainani is not some weird, it's like Isarjis, you should always be worried, it'd be Mechrias Kaloilim, it's the reality. Because you're always either getting better or getting worse. Nobody is static. So, therefore, we have a Zez Tshuva to get you better, and therefore the main Tshuva according to the Rambam is on Midas, not on Mitzvahs. How do I know this? It says in the Rambam, Perek Zayin. I read this to you probably in that thing, if you remember. In Perek Zayin, Nachas Tshuva, it says, in Nachalech Gimel, and of course, I'm telling you something that's a little weird, but it says in Nachas Tshuva, Perek Zayin, Nachalech Gimel, Al Toimer. Don't think. No. It's true you have to do tshuva from a very shesh master, but let's be real. What's the point? Just stop doing that. There's not tshuva to do. And he gives a list. Very long list. It's harder to do tshuva on these. Why? Because it's harder to change those. So of course, Kulai Ve'ile will have 40 days of talking about tshuva. Maybe it'll make you move one midah. Because it's harder. And he brings a pusik, Yazav Risha Darke Vishav Machshavaisav. He seems to understand what's this Darke. What kind of Derech does Risha have? You have a Derech that you were Machal Shabbos on, that's not a Derech. Derech means a way, so it means a habit.
I think the whole...
It must be a bad habit. Now, how do I know? I'm just going to finish this word that I'm saying, and he'll frig me up. How do I know that this, the Yazav Risha Darke is Ikra Shiv, and not like it seems like he's saying the first 4 prakim, whatever, 3 prakim, are about regular tshuva, or Avaydus, and then he has one thief, and I say that's the main one. So my eye is like this, because in Perek Beis, where he gives us as a tshuva gemura, the Rambam's actual definition of tshuva, it says, Imaya tshuva and halacha beis. And what is tshuva? It's very funny that the Rambam did a perek and a half until he says what tshuva is. And the reason for that is, as I explained in the previous shurim, in the tshuva, that he's stuck reconciling a bunch of halachas with what actually tshuva is. So he has to first pater all the halachas and then say what it really is. And he says, what is tshuva? It stopped he sheyazav achayt chetoi. Thank you very much. Tshuva is to stop the sin. So tshuva is not that God loves you so much and will accept you even like this. He says that. In Perek Zayin, the next halacha that I read you, it says, Bal tshuva, ali down Bal tshuva shemericha, God loves you, blah, blah, blah.
I think that you
but he actually explains it according to this. And
isn't that what his example is also?
Wait, let me finish. And it says, Maya tshuva yazav chet v'yasirim machshavta v'ig melibush l'sayah. It just means deciding not to do things. This caused many people to get very confused because of this Deil Telimus, but it's really the opposite. That's not it. And shenemar, yazav risha darke v'shav machshava esav. So the pasuk that told him in the halacha part what the real tshuva is the pasuk that actually, according to halacha Perek Zayin, is talking about changing your habits. And this yazav achoy techet v'yasir arim machshavta, all that, what is that all about? It's a lot of words for saying stop sinning. Yeah. What it's really about is to stop loving the sin. And which sins are you not allowed to love? It says in the Perek Vav, and Shemana Prakim, nothing wrong with loving chazah. The Brayz says you should love chazah, so you can't be meisir achilas chazah v'machshavta. And also there's nothing to do about it. Either eat chazah or you don't eat chazah. It's like nothing major going on. And if you don't love it, actually something wrong with you, because human beings should like chazah. There's nothing humanly wrong with liking chazah. So, but what he's talking about obviously is things that it's bad, like all the stuff bad midas that he has, and those you have to be meisir machshavta and so on, and that's what Yazav Risha Darke means. So that's the same pasuk, and that's what the real meaning of tshuva is. That's the Rambam's pshat, and I think that I said this last time, but here it's a lot clearer that this is like part of the Rambam's general way of he really understands things in the way that Aristotle understands them, and he thinks that the Torah is really about that, and it's not hard to say that he's wrong in this kind of thing. Like, do you have a proof that the reason we talk about tshuva so much is not because of that? You could have the other one, but the Rambam, we could give another, maybe I gave it already, why the other thing is really about this. But
it's very hard to find tshuva getting too specific. You learn. I remember being disturbed by this when I was younger. I'm trying to daven from Yom Kippur, and I want to do tshuva on like acts, various acts, and this is like no one's talking about it here. So finally give you if someone does not say, okay, fine, that's something. Like an actual Avera that's high.
Which Avera?
I don't know, missing is my creation, I don't know, whatever. I'm just saying, fine, they give you, you say the whole thing, you have nothing, you literally have nothing. It's a bunch of general midas, right? It's not...
Very good. So Al-Chit is an ayat to my theory, that it's really about
the whole Yom Kippur davening, you never discuss, there's actually a Shivish one, there's a Shamnu, and Shamnu that's just very general, just like...
Right, I know what you mean. But on the other hand, the Yom Kippur davening is about convincing God to be Ma'achal.
That could be.
But so that does prove my theory. Okay. Not my theory, the regular theory that is.
So I think that could be reconciled, but I'm just saying, my point is that I used to be disturbed, I want to do tshuva on missing Krishma.
But by the way, there's no such a thing as doing tshuva on missing Krishma. The only thing you could do is tomorrow wake up.
Right, of course, yeah.
There isn't what are you going to do? Have charot? What does that mean? I'm not doing it. There isn't this internal work only makes sense if you're talking about. And by the way, I forgot to talk about this really tshuva. The even bigger tshuva would be to have the correct dayas. That's why in Yom Kippur, I never said this drasha already. That's why in Yom Kippur we have the Yom Kippur is based on Yidgul Tzarachmem. And Yidgul Tzarachmem is about knowing what God really is, and really that's about the story. Yidgul is what we do could say, but it's positive attributes because according to Rambam it's attributes of action. But the half of the story of Yom Kippur is the story of what we don't know about God, right? And that's why we don't eat. This is not my practice. It says already in the Rambam or some Maimonidean that you don't like, that we don't eat in Kippur to learn that we shouldn't have Hashem. Because when you eat, you think in food terms. When you don't eat, you could think more abstractly. At least that's the theory. And maybe it's just a symbol, I don't know. And therefore, the real Avodas HaTshuva is to change your mind. Because we keep on talking about this. This is Perek Gimel. I didn't go back to Perek Gimel, which we have to finish still. But there's two levels, right? There's someone that knows the right thing and doesn't do it or doesn't like it, which is what we're talking about now. But there's really even a bigger problem where you don't even know the truth. Either you don't know the truth of action or you don't know the theoretical truths. And we all of the Darshanim of Elul, they all pretend that we already know the truth and we already know what to do. And this is crazy. Nobody knows either the truth or what to do. Why? How do you know it? It's steht in Torah. Okay, can you tell me what steht in Torah?
If you did it, what do you think Teshuva for?
No, there is, because you're not doing it, because you have Yetzirah, you have to do the Shvois L'Levecha. But of course, since we don't believe in that so much, or at least we think that there's a lot more of the other problem going on, therefore, this is definitely doable. You could convince yourself of more truth than you have before. You could learn more clearly and think more clearly. And the Ram says Beferish and that part of Teshuva is to have better opinions. And I think that's why in Kippur we talk about the truth of knowing God. So those are the two things that are actual internal work that makes sense to talk about, in the sense of and they could work. They could happen. You could. It's very. This is where the promising that God will forgive you comes in, because most people are miyush. Most people think that you cannot change either your mind, or your loves, or your likes. And we have many kinds of reasons and justifications for that. Al Qaeda Maran want funny theories, and people say, "Well, I've read that book, and since then I can't think differently." What do you mean you can't? Let's think it through. Is it correct? Is it for sure? Why can't you change your mind? It's so easy to change your mind. And something with your habits. Why can't you change your habits? What's a habit? It's just something you do a lot of times. It becomes something that you like. So start doing it the other thing. That's basically Perek Dalet. Not so complicated. You could start liking other things. Doesn't take a day, but you could. And the mushal for this is saying that God will accept you. But that's a mushal. It's not really. It's not very good to say this. It's a mushal.
I think another element the Rambam does that is he always concretizes into halacha also. He makes halachas out of it. Like everything's halacha. Like the same way like Shema is to learn every day, and then you make halachas out of it, right? Mm-hmm. Like you concretize it. You make it into very like concrete. I hear. That's the theory of halacha. We get into what the whole. Let's get into the general theory of that.
But Teshuva is not very concrete. Like unless you say like say vidui or something like that.
As much as possible, he puts into halacha. Like things because
okay. You wanna turn off my red button? Oh, good.
What?
No, I think there's a button with like a red circle around it.